Did you figure out a solution to the newspaper problem? If you remember, I took a cup of clear water, poured it into the newspaper, turned the newspaper completely upside down, none of the water came out, turned the newspaper back right side up, and poured out red water into my cup. Well, let's take a look at the problem here. First of all, you're going to have something in your newspaper that is relatively flat, so it doesn't give away anything, and something that's going to hold water. And a baggie certainly meets that criteria. So I could just hot glue gun or tape a baggie in one of those pages. I could pour the water in, but then if I turned it upside down, the water would come back out. I could have used some of that chemical in the bottom of the baggie like we used the other day in the cup so that it would gel up. But then even when I turned it upside down, that gel would come out, and then also I wouldn't have the final conclusion of pouring out red water. So we can't put that chemical in there, but we can change our baggie just a little bit. If I hot glue gun the top of the baggie shut, just halfway over, and hot glue gun halfway down in the middle, that baggie, I now have some compartments in there. And so I simply poured my water in here. The water flows and it's going to settle down in here. Next, I turned my newspaper 90 degrees, so now that water would have settled down in here. I turned it another 90 degrees, so now that water would settle down in here, and none of the water would come out the newspaper when I turned it completely upside down. I also had a little bit of red food coloring in my baggie so that when I am turning this water upside down, it mixes with that red food coloring. Now I'm going to turn it 90 degrees back, another 90 degrees back, and now I can turn it 90 degrees here and pour out the red water. So that is the solution to our newspaper problem. The solution to how thick is the paper when you fold it 50 times? Well, we kind of broke it down into two problems. First of all, I need to know the thickness of one piece of paper, and I gave you a standard ruler to try and figure that out. And we mentioned that's not the instrument that you would use. Actually, you'd get some calipers to measure the thickness of a piece of paper. But I gave you a clue. If you put 100 sheets of notebook paper together, and then you held them tight together and measured that thickness, to find out the thickness of one piece of paper, if you had 100 pieces, just simply divide by 100, and you would get something close to 4/1000ths of an inch, 4/1000ths of an inch. Very, very thin piece of paper. So now that we have what one piece of paper is, then I gave you the problem, all right, if you're going to fold a big piece of paper, which we couldn't get the paper big enough to do it, 50 times, what would be the thickness? And this is kind of unbelievable. You're just not going to believe this. But here we go. I'm going to fold it in half one time, and I get two thicknesses of paper. I take those two thicknesses of paper and fold them in half a second time, and I would get 4 thicknesses of paper. Then I would fold those 4 thicknesses of paper in half again, and I would end up with 8 thicknesses. And we're going to carry this out to 50 times. I'm going to fold it. What would be the thickness of the paper? Well, we look for a pattern. And what pattern do you see here? Well, we see if this is the base number and this is our exponent, we are taking 2 to the first power and we get 2. 2 to the second power and we get 4. 2 to the third power and we get 8. So our question is, what is 2 to the 50th power? And that comes out to be, if we started out with 4/1000ths of an inch, we're going to have 2 to the 50th power. It comes out to about 71 million miles. That's how thick that paper, if you fold it 50 times, it'd be about 71 million miles thick. That is something. There's kind of another thing you can do with this. Let's say, go to your parents and say, for my allowance this month, I just want you to give me a penny the first day of the month, and then just double it. Give me 2 pennies the second day, give me 4 pennies the third day, and give me 8 pennies the fourth day. So I just want you, in other words, to double the amount that you're going to give me every day for a month. Well, if you started out with a penny, at the end of 30 days, if you do the calculations, you would have about $1 million. So if your parents will do that with you, that would be great.